Money doesn't just come from one place. It drips, trickles, flows, and floods into our lives in different ways. Welcome to Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood, a podcast that explores the power of multiple income streams. We've got merch. That's right. Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood t-shirts are officially here, and they're as comfy as they are conversation starting. Grab yours at the link in our show notes. All right, everybody. We are so excited to have Madison Campione here with us today. She's the founder and creative director of Wanderlust Films, and we know she has a lot of different drips, trickles, flows, and floods that she'll share with us, so we cannot wait to hear about this. Thank you so much for joining us, Madison. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Madison. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
So let's start with Wanderlust Film and the filmmaking and that world, and then we can go into some of the other things that you do that are fun and creative, and both creative in what they are and, you know, how you're using them to kind of kick off other income streams and that sort of thing. But yeah, let's talk movies and shows first.
Great. Yeah, so I have a production company called Wanderlust Films, and we're based in Bellingham. And so far, I've created a pilot episode for a TV series. It's called The Disappearance of Violet Willoughby, and we shot it locally in Whatcom County in 2023. And it's about a 30-minute long episode.
Yeah. So how'd you get into making films, wanting to do that? And then it's one thing to say, okay, I want to make a film or a show. What's that next step? How do you get from that idea to actually putting it into reality?
Yeah, so I went to film school. Film has been a big part of my life since I was, I think, about 9 years old. I started helping my dad making little videos, and then eventually decided I wanted to make it into a career. So I went to USC Film School in Los Angeles and did some deep dive into, learning all the aspects of film production, from pre-production, which is like development and scripting and then into directing, on set work. And they, put you through all the different positions. So you learn what it's like to be assistant director, to be a producer, to be a cinematographer, and then all the way through to post-production, which would be editing, color grading, all of that. So it was a very intensive process, or, I think it was 3 years of just like learning filmmaking. And then once I was done with that, I felt very prepared to go and launch my own company. And because I had such a strong understanding of all of those aspects. And so then from there, I was able to be like, okay, I need to outsource some of this work because, you can't do it all by yourself. Filmmaking is a very collaborative process. And so finding producers that would be excited about the project and help figure out, budgeting, and finding people to be on the crew. Like we had a lot of local crew in Bellingham, and I had just moved to Bellingham from San Jose, California, in 2021. And so when I first got here, I already had the script and the idea, and I knew I wanted to do it. And when I came here, I was like, this is the perfect setting for it. And so then it was all about networking and finding the right people in Bellingham to make it a reality. So yeah, and it was so incredibly, it was an amazing experience because we had so much community support, people volunteering their time. We were a low budget pilot, so it's not like we had tons of, money to make this. So a lot of people were really just volunteering their time, and we had a lot of businesses, just like donating certain things. Like we had beer from, I think it was Stemma Brewing. They like donated their cans so that we would have their cans in one of our party scenes and stuff like that. So like people were just, and the Everson, shout out to the Everson fire department. We needed the fire department in a scene carrying this little girl out of a burning building, not really burning, and put into an ambulance and, like resuscitated basically, or they attempt to resuscitate her. And so we had this whole extravagant scene. And we're like, how the heck are we going to pull this off? It's going to be so expensive. But the Everson Fire Department was like, oh yeah, we'll just make this into like a training exercise. And so they like came with their, ambulance. I think they had an ambulance and a fire truck, or it was like a whole brigade of them, and they were amazing. And they were actually in the pilot, like, going through all their what they would do in real life, right? Um, and carrying her out of the house. And it was so surreal. But yeah, so that's just an example of how like supportive our community was and like making that happen. And they didn't, we didn't have to, it was all part of their training exercise. So it was volunteer, and that was just so amazing.
That's amazing. Very resourceful. It's not easy to get the funds and resources to make a film, that's for sure. So bravo to you. Now, what stage is this pilot in? Have you sold it? Does it have distribution? Where is that right now?
So the pilot is a 30-minute proof of concept. So I knew that based off of, the funds that we had available, we wouldn't be able to like complete the hour long, like the actual pilot that would be put into, the whole series, like on a streamer. So basically it's a proof of concept that we're using to pitch to production companies and streamers so that we can get the whole series funded eventually. So the proof of concept pilot's complete, and now we're working to like try to attach producers with connections to streamers so that we can get our foot in the door and be able to, because you can't just, walk up to Netflix and be like, hey, we have this great pilot. Like, let's make a stream. Let's make a series on your streamer without having a connection that they've worked with before, that they're like, oh yeah, like we know this person, we trust this person. So currently in the process of finding, bringing on more people that have connections to those streamers, and then being able to pitch directly to them.
So, Melissa knows this world very well. I don't, and I'm assuming that a lot of our listeners do not. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What does that mean to go find people that connect with Netflix? Do you like go hang out at the bar where you think they're going to show up, or do you, like how are you making those connections? How do you create the path that could actually bring this show to life?
Yeah, so it's a lot of networking and the connections that you already have, and finding out like, hey, like, oh, I know this person who might potentially know some producers. And so sending out those emails. So since I went to USC, I have a network through USC, reaching out to professors that I've had previously, reaching out to um, other students, other graduates, alumni. And it's all just like, you're like, hey, this is my project. Like, I'm looking for a executive producer. Would you happen to know anybody, or would you be potentially interested? So it's a lot of just like who which is, I think, the reason it's hard to really start out in the film industry is it's like, well, if you don't have those connections, it's really hard to get your foot in the door. And then there are programs and like, what are they called? Grant. Well, there's grants. There's like development, like for people who are just starting out in the industry, certain workshops and development programs.
Yeah,
Where you
most of
can
the
connect.
networks have them. Most of the major
Yeah.
networks have those development networks. And it's either just for our listeners to know, it can be specific to screenwriting, it can be specific to directing, it can be specific to producing, but they'll accept like a small number of people every year. And then also, one question I was going to ask for you, Madison, is are you going the festival route? So that's a really popular route, obviously, for folks with a proof of concept to take out. So is that something that you're considering, something you're doing? Curious what's popping there.
Yeah. So I've learned that even if you have a pilot that I would consider it's a good pilot, it's very hard to get them into festivals. I've submitted to a lot of festivals, and there's just been no real luck in that regard. And I've had short films in the past where with short films, I find it's a lot easier to get into festivals, maybe because it's not as niche. But when you're pitching, when you're like, okay, this is a pilot for a series, a lot of the times festivals don't have a category for that. So there aren't that many festivals offering that. And then if I submit it as a short film, it's a little bit long because it's about 30 minutes. So it's kind of on the upper end of what they would have for their programming. So yes, I have been applying to that, but I've realized that it's not probably the best route for a pilot. And then since this is my first pilot, I mean, I've done short films in the past, but like since this is the first pilot, I'm kind of learning trial by fire a little bit about the film festival route, realizing it's not, and then you have to pay for every submission that you every time you submit to a festival, you're paying a submission fee. So, it kind of adds up. And after you've applied to like 20 of them, you're like, okay, we need to we need to pivot a little bit. So I'm kind of in that pivoting mode where now I'm focusing more on like what potential talent can we bring on that might have connections with streamers? What executive producer, ideally someone that has a connection to the Pacific Northwest, this scene, that would be great because I would love to film the whole series here, ideally, and bring more film making to Washington.
So explain the finances to me a little bit, right? So you write the script, you got to figure out, you actually go as far as making this test pilot. At what point do you get to make some money?
Well, that that is a good question. I think with filmmaking, it's hard to make money, especially when you're an independent filmmaker, but it is possible. Down the line, if I am able to sell it to a streamer, and have a, you know, a fee essentially like, hey, like this is like if I was saying, hey, I have this script, they would pay me for the script potentially. But the route that I'm going, I would really love to not give up all of creative control. Like I don't want to be like, hey, here's my project, here's everything I worked on for like 6 years. Now, you guys can just take it. And in that route, like they would just pay me immediately and then I would be kind of out of the loop. But because I don't want to do that, it's going to be a lot of negotiations. Once you go to a streamer, you'd be like, okay, so this is my project. I would love to stay on in some sort of co-showrunner. A showrunner is like, it's basically like a director for a TV series. They have a different power structure in TV where like the writers are the ones that have most of the power and then the directors are brought on sometimes individually for individual episodes. So like a showrunner is like the head honcho. And I was thinking like, hey, I could come on as a co-showrunner, definitely not as a complete, the top level showrunner because I don't have experience show running a show. But if I came in with someone else that has that experience and that connection and has done it before, it would be great to have a say on like how the story is portrayed and be able to have some creative input on it going forward. And so that would be a negotiation that we would have once they say, okay, we agree to keep you on as like a co-showrunner, something like that. And then potentially get paid for my role on the production. So it's a lot of like, who knows if you'll get paid sort of situation.
So,
You have to love it.
yeah. So a few episodes ago, we did an episode on fast money, fun, slow dreams. Nailed it, Melissa, because I wrote it down before I read it. So tell us how you've got to eat, you've got to put gas in the tank, which is not easy to do right now. All the things. So tell us about some of these other, your other income streams that you've created so that you can pursue this dream of bringing this show to life.
My main income stream currently is as an independent contractor for film, more like video production. So making videos for companies, social media for specific companies and things like that. More like corporate, a lot of interviews, live streams. I have a good amount of technical expertise in editing, so that's been my main income. Because with editing, you can typically charge a pretty high amount if you have if you have a good amount of experience. And people are always in need of editors. So editing is a good route to go if you were a filmmaker and you have that skill set. Also, you can do that from anywhere. So it's nice to have that flexibility. And then on top of that, I also house sit and watch or walk dogs as like a side gig. And that's been great. um, I'm feeding a cat every day, twice a day. It's in my neighborhood. It's very, very convenient and he's adorable. So
The pet
things like
industry
that.
is lucrative. People will pay anything for, and I'll raise my hand as one of them. And it's like for great pet care. So that is definitely smart, and it's cool because it gives you probably a lot of flexibility too to work on your creative projects.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been great because, I do a lot of house sitting. So I'll be, at someone's house and I went on a long walk with the dog or whatever, and we come back to the house and I'm still watching the dog, but I can be like working on my other
Yeah.
side businesses or my writing for my next project or anything like that. So it's
Do you get
nice.
story ideas by house sitting? Like, are there like some interesting people or situations you come across that you feel are you're mining for story?
I think that I'm always mining for story. Everyone I meet, I'm like, are you an interesting, like, there's usually a quirk that I'm like, oh, that'd be a good character trait. So yes, I've definitely had some experiences. If I ever do a film about dogs, like I've definitely got a gold mine on that. All the quirky personalities of dogs. They're very unique. And yeah, so on top of that, I write murder mystery games. Um,
Ooh,
and
that's cool.
so
So wait, tell us a
yeah,
little bit about that. So is it board games, digital games? What does that look like?
so there are party games that are printable. So I've done one so far, selling it on Etsy. And basically you buy this digital file and then you print it out from there. And it has booklets for each character. And
I want it.
it's
Can you give us the
well,
link for our audience?
yes,
This is so
yes, I'll give
fun.
you the link.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Shrek parody. And so it was so much fun. I did it with my friends for my birthday last year and we loved it so much. I was like, you know what? I just need to see if anybody else in the world would want to buy this or play this. And it's been selling pretty well. So I was like,
I
okay,
bet.
like this is great. Um, and I just love being able to bring, I don't know, more connection and joy to like our world right now because it's a little bit, it's tough right now for everyone pretty much. And so making games that are just like an excuse to get together with your friends. I I don't know. I do that anyway with my friends. I'm like, hey, so I'm giving you these characters. You're just gonna, can you dress up and like come over and they're like, yeah, sure. And so I don't know, like the joy that it brings, it's great. So yeah, it's a Shrek parody. It's called Murder at Not So Far Away's Got Talent.
This is great, and we talk about this a lot too. Is finding these dream adjacent type work you can do that can keep the dream alive. It's funding. It's funding your life. These different things, and maybe the dog walking isn't exactly dream adjacent, but who doesn't want to hang out with a dog or cat? So yeah, you're editing videos, you're helping people with that and maybe it's not exactly the type of filmmaking you want to be doing, but you're still doing it. And then, I mean, you obviously enjoy writing and creating stories and all that, and you're doing that with the games. And so it's just really cool to me how you have created this world where you're pursuing your dream. You're all in. You went to school for it. You're chasing it. You're finding what you're getting the Everson Fire Department involved, and you're like, oh, you're doing all the things you need to do to like pursue that. And then while you're doing that, you're doing things you enjoy to still create that income to live your life. So how do you stay motivated for the dream, right? You're doing these other things to keep your world going, but this is a long runway to bring a show to life. How do you stay motivated and not say, "Oh, I'm just going to move on to something else," or "This isn't a reality"?
I think for me, I have to have multiple things going on. So like that project, like I said, like I've been working on it for probably over 6 years now. So like if that was the only thing, the only creative project I had going on, I think I would definitely fall flat and like be like not motivated at all. But like I feel like I constantly have a different idea or like, oh, I can make a film about this or like or another film. So like parallel ideas. Not that I necessarily have time to be writing another film right now, but like I have been like developing one. So it's having being able to kind of bounce back and forth, having something to like keep things fresh is helpful.
So when you say developing a film, what does that mean? Because I have a script I tried to write, and I just sat down and just started writing, literally having no idea what I was doing. And the feedback that I've gotten so far is, Tony, you have no idea what you're doing. So how do you, when you go about and you're starting a project, like what does that look like?
I never start writing the script until I have everything figured out. And I don't think that that's a common way to write. I think some writers do what you were saying, where you just sit down and you go. I'm curious what the ratio is of between like the people that are like hardcore outliners and people that just like start writing. But for me, like I have to outline, like things need to be figured out to a T before I even start writing like the actual script. So for me, development means figuring out all the characters, figuring out the story, how everything's going to fit together. If it's a longer story, if it's going to be episodic, like what happens in each episode sort of thing. So yeah, it's for me, it's figuring out everything except writing the actual words in the script.
I think that's smart too, Madison, because just to give some like inside baseball to our listeners, when you're writing, the stuff I write is with studios. So that's part of your deal is like it's a step in your deal. So you're paid in steps, right? So you're paid for usually the initial concept or idea, and then you are paid for a treatment or an outline or sometimes both, depending. And then you're paid for each draft. So what happens sometimes is, to your point, Madison, if you're somebody who is like a vomiter versus an outliner, right? You're just sort of vomiting everything out on the page. And then you end up in a job, right, where you're getting paid for this particular project and you don't know how to outline. That can be a real problem because then you may not proceed past that phase and they can fire you off the project. It's very, very common for studios to do that. So I actually think it's like a great benefit when you are an outliner, and especially if you are producing your own work, right, where you don't have a studio partner at this time. So if you're doing it yourself, it's such a great habit to get into because then later when you do have those studio partners, you're going to be like, yep, I can knock off these things you can please a buyer and it's super easy. So it's a great habit to get into.
Melissa, did you just call me a vomiter?
Yeah, I mean, I call it that. I guess, and that's not always a bad thing. Like there are brilliant things that come out from people who vomit. Sometimes so I can't say like no one who does that is ever going to be successful. But I will say, just from a business perspective, when you work in this industry, that is a normal step in your deal. So knowing how to do that is just so key. So I think, Madison's way of doing that, I want to give her some kudos, is great because as she grows and proceeds with her career, that's only going to help her.
I'll also say that's a process that I use when I'm doing my more like corporate videos. Because when you're working with clients, you would typically want to have a similar process. You have like a general outline of what you're going to talk, what this video is going to be, before you script it, and then do an audio visual script, which is typically when you would do for each line, there would be a visual. It's in a table essentially, but like on one side, it would be, this is what the line is. And then on the other side, there would be either like a little storyboard or a description of what they'll see. And so thinking that, I think that way because I'm doing that in work, uh, for the videos that I'm already making for corporate.
Did you learn that in school, or did you learn this as you were doing these more corporate jobs, or how did you develop this process?
I've been doing the corporate video world probably since college or before college. So I've been doing it for a long time, but I do think I always have been an outliner for all of my short films. And that's been since like high school. But I think in high school, I didn't have the process down at that point. So I want to say, yeah, I want to say like around college time, I started to kind of really solidify what worked for me when I was in film school. And also like during the summer, I would be doing corporate work. So like kind of doing both at the same time.
So what's coming up? Are you gonna do more murder mysteries? You got any exciting shows you want to tell us about? What's the future hold, and what can people expect to get from you?
So right now, I'm working on building a platform specifically for women screenwriters and filmmakers. I really want to do it's going to be called Wanderlust Creative, and kind of like a brand I'm passionate about is inspiring and empowering women to make films and to be screenwriters. And um I'm on the board of Cascadia Women's International Film Festival, which is a film festival in Bellingham that really focuses on championing women directors. And so it's films from all over the world, all with women directors. And so that kind of inspired me along with my work with film is, just creating a blog. I really want to do like online courses. So I'm building that right now. Wanderlust Creative will be the name of it. And yeah, I'm really excited to just figure out like to build a community of women filmmakers, particularly women filmmakers that are interested in like intentional living and like being outdoorsy, and mostly because that's just who I am and what I'm interested in. And so it'd be great to be like, hey, like, whether you're interested in screenwriting or you're curious about like how to live like a semi nomadic life, because van life is something that I really want to get into. Um, Basically how to create a creative life that works for you, essentially. That's what I really want to write about and to encourage people to do.
That's really cool. And do you have you already started that process a bit? Like, do you have meetups for women in film, or like have you gathered anyone together yet, or would this be brand new for you?
So I recently talked at an authors conference at Chanticleer Authors Conference in Bellingham, and I I did a talk about screenwriting and a couple of other talks about indie filmmaking and stuff like that. And so I've started building like an email list, like a um insider circle email list newsletter. So that's my first step, is just getting people's emails, getting people to connect with me. And then I also offer one-to-one like script consultations. So that's something that I'm starting to launch now, is um script consultations and like creative coaching sort of thing. So that's available now, but it's going to be like a core offering on the website. So, creative quote coaching, and then starting to build my first online course be the next step. My goal is to have um ideally as much of like an online business as possible. So I can have, you can buy the game there if you want to, or you can read the blog, or if the online courses interest you, and possibly doing a for it, like going into a podcast or a YouTube channel. So I'm still in the process of building it, figuring out exactly what it should look like. But that will be largely dependent on the community that I build and what everyone's like looking for. And eventually I would love to do retreats. I think that would be so
Oh,
cool. Like bringing women writers, screenwriters together um in this area because it's gorgeous. And yeah, and working on our projects together and building community.
It's very cool. I feel like you're very much living the kind of like the drip, trickle, flow, flood lifestyle, and like building the drip, trickle, flow, flood lifestyle, which is really all about, creating income streams that allow you to do what you want to do, live life the way you want to do. Maybe that's in a van, maybe that's in Portugal, like one of our guests, or maybe that's in a community, in a cul-de-sac, whatever, you're raising your family. There's no right or wrong answer. It's whatever the individual wants to do. And I think it's really cool that you've created and are continuing to create that world, and a world that can kind of change with you over time as your interests and skills and stages of life change. You're building these foundations that they can evolve with you.
yeah, it's very cool to learn about. Thank you so much, Madison, for sharing everything with us. And we're super excited for all your future projects. You're going to have to let us know and keep us posted on everything, because we definitely want to make sure that we follow you and our audience follows you. So we'll link to everything in our show notes so that everyone can find you and your awesome projects and that game, because I need to buy that immediately. And I hope that you make more. Um, and with that said, thank you so much for sharing with us today, Madison. Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review on your favorite podcast platform. And we'll see you next time on Drip Trickle Flow Flood. Thanks, Madison.
Thanks so much.